Hey everyone, Jason here, digital marketing consultant, and have you ever had one of those weeks where you're looking back and you're just filled with a sense of accomplishment because of all of the momentum and everything you've accomplished over the previous week in moving your business forward, and then you have the exact opposite experience the next week? Well, in this video, we're going to go over some actionable strategies that you can use to plan out your week to make sure you have more of those Friday nights where you feel like you got a lot done, as opposed to looking back and going, oh, that was kind of a mess. So timestamp table of contents in the description, along with some other helpful videos I'll be referencing while we go through planning out your week. So first, we're going to set ourselves up for success using the refresh, refocus, and reframe method. Then we're going to use the 1-5-3 method for actually physically planning out how you're going to spend your time. And then we'll wrap up with something that I've personally developed called inputs to make sure that your week flows smoothly and you have that flow state throughout the whole week, as opposed to feeling like you're running around wearing multiple hats with your head cut off. So let's go ahead and dive right in. The very first step is making sure that you refresh your mind, because as an entrepreneur, it's really easy for things to just pile up in the back of your mind, in your head, and then it just becomes this jumbled mess and it's really hard to focus. So there's 3 things you want to do. You want to spend 5 to 10 minutes just data downloading everything that's going on up here onto a piece of paper or someplace where you store everything, like Evernote, which is what I personally use. And essentially what I do is, if I can find the notebook, there it is I spend 5 to 10 minutes and I just write out everything that is on my mind, whether it's a project, an idea, a task, an email I have to follow up on, anxiety I have over failing on a client account, which sometimes happens, and whatever's going on, I just get it out onto that piece of paper, and then I categorize it into 3 different things. Number 1, if it's a business idea that isn't super important or super urgent, then I go ahead and put it in my ideas file in Evernote, and I pretty much just don't look at it until I'm setting my goals. The second one is maybe it's a full project that is important but not necessarily urgent. So I'll add that to our project manager, and then I'll add it to our not now list, which is essentially a list of things I want to do but aren't super important. And then the final category are the things that are urgent or are important, or fires that need to be put out, roadblocks that have popped up that I have to take care of before I can actually reach my goals, because no matter how much we plan, there's always things that pop up, right? And so the whole purpose of this exercise is to just make sure you're going in with a clear head and you have everything that's on your mind in front of you, so you can make good informed decisions when you get into actually planning how you're going to spend your time. Now, the second step of your preparation for planning your week is going to be refocus, and this is where you're going to look at your goals. Now, if you don't have any goals, well, then I'll link in the description to a video that walks you through how to put them together. I'm just going to briefly show you how we put together our goals using the 4 digital business quadrants. So we see it as there are 4 major parts of any digital business. There's your team and internal stuff. Then there's your content and content marketing. There's your sales funnel, which is your sales process. And then of course your products and services. And so we create 3 major goals for each part of our business. In product, we're looking at improving a product, creating a new service. In the sales funnel quadrant, we just look at how we can improve our current sales processes or create a new one. With team, we're looking at who do we need to hire, what training do we need to do, what internal processes or accounting do we need to fix. And then of course content is creating YouTube videos like this, or it could be creating blog posts or podcast episodes, depending upon what you're doing. But essentially you want to refocus and make sure that now that you've gotten everything out of your head, you've also taken a look at your goals, and the goals still make sense in the context of everything that you've learned over the previous week or quarter. And then the final process of getting ready to plan your week is going to be the reframe. And there's actually 2 steps to this. So the first step is making sure that you go through your calendar and block out everything that you already are committed to. So this is where, if you still have a full-time job or part-time job, there's just going to be this big time block where you're at work. That's just the reality for most of us entrepreneurs who are just getting started. And if you have any family events, doctor's appointments, you have any sort of client calls already scheduled, you want to make sure that all of those are put on the calendar, because those are things that are like giant boulders that just can't be moved, and then we're going to plan around them. Then the second thing you want to do is make sure that you plan out how much time are you going to spend per day working. And so this is going to give you a complete frame for how you're going to fit all of your tasks in, because if you spent the previous week working 12 and 14-hour days, this week you should probably back off a little bit, or vice versa, depending upon how many hours. So you definitely want to make sure that you're not burning yourself out and be really aware of how many hours you're working. For me personally, I try to get around 9 to 10 hours in my marathon pace. If I have a really busy week where I'm going above 10 hours 3 or 4 days in the week, then the next week I'll try and reduce those hours a little bit to make sure I don't get sick and I don't hit burnout. So with that, we're finally ready to use the 1-5-3 method to actually physically choose how we're going to spend the rest of our time. And so first things first, we want to find what is the one thing that if we could do this week would move our business forward and make everything easier in the long run. Now, this technique isn't necessarily mine. I got it from The One Thing by Gary Keller. This book looks super dirty because I literally take it everywhere with me. This is the most impactful book I've ever read on productivity, so I highly recommend it. I'll link up Amazon link in the description. And essentially the whole premise is you want to, of all of your goals and everything that you wrote down in Refresh, there's one specific thing that's going to be the most important long-term to building your business. And often, as you'll see in the next section, it's not going to be something that's urgent. It's not going to feel like something that's super important right now. But if you give it time and you invest that time now, over time, it's going to make everything else in your business easier. So it's going to be different for all of us. For me personally, it's making YouTube content, because growing this channel and investing in becoming a little better on video each and every time, well, you know, as good as I can get for a video, right? Then it's going to make growing our business that much easier. So it's going to be different for you, but you want to make sure that you time block at least 3 to 4 hours as early as you can in the day and as early as you can in the week. Ideally, what Gary teaches in his book is you spend the first 3 to 4 hours of your day on your one thing 5 days a week. Now, obviously, that's not something all of us can do. Personally, I actually started out waking up early in the morning before work and doing my one thing for 3 hours, and then I would go to work, come home, and do all the other stuff, right? For you, that might be different. Another technique that I actually use now is my one thing is done the first 2 days of the week. So instead of spreading it out throughout the week, I just have Monday and Tuesday is content. I go really hard, and then I push everything off to the rest of the week. Of course, it's just going to depend upon what those big boulders are in terms of the frame of what your week looks like. So once you have your one thing out of the way, then we have to make room for everything else. And so this is where the 5 method comes in. And the 5 method has to do with the 5 levels of the value ladder, because everything on your plate has a value. If you were, as an entrepreneur, part of your job is to delegate, right? So if you're looking at a task, how much would it cost for you to delegate it? And so you want to give a cost to everything that's on your list, from $10 all the way up to $1,000. So $1,000 an hour work is things that are going to be growing your business. And as an entrepreneur, that's your primary role, growing the business. Then underneath that, $100 an hour work is either creating content, if that's a part of how you're growing your business digitally, or working on your business. That's developing processes, finding new people, training current hires. And then we have in your business, $50 an hour work, which is just the day-to-day, making sure things run, making sure customers and clients are happy. And then we have $10 an hour work, which is all the administrative stuff that most of us don't really like doing, but it's kind of like that necessary email, kind of evil. See, I gave it away. Necessary evil, kind of like email, which we'll get to email in the next step when we talk about 3. But here, essentially, you want to give everything on your list a value and then try and push as much as you can to the top 2 levels. Now, I follow a 2-week rule when it comes to the in your business work and the administrative work, because I try and spend as much time as possible on working on the business and growing the business. Because let's face it, we don't have the budget to immediately go out and hire all of those lower priced tasks. But what you can do is make sure that you give enough time to those higher priced ones, because the more you spend on the top of the ladder, the more income your business is going to make, so you can actually hire out the bottom. So I use the 2-week rule, where if something on those lower levels isn't going to cause a huge problem if I don't do it this week, then I'll push it off the next week, and I never get more than 2 weeks ahead on those projects on the bottom. So you can use your own method, but that's the way I make sure that I always balance between what really has to be done to just keep things going and the things that are ultimately going to grow and move the business forward. Now, the last step of your process, you probably have 90 to almost maybe 100% now of your week planned out, is using the 3 windows technique, because at the end of the day, we do have to check our email, we do have to communicate with other people, but often it's something that can really suck away our energy and get in the way of productivity. And so what you want to do is choose 3 specific times throughout your day where you're going to open yourself up, hence the window, right? I know it's silly. Open yourself up to the rest of the world, where you take in communication, where you process, and then you close back up and you go back to doing productive, deep work, hopefully. So the way this works is essentially you want to make sure that you're not checking your inbox and your chats all day long. Now, yes, you'll have meetings. Those are already scheduled. Yes, you'll need to collaborate with people. That's already scheduled, right? This is where, you're a little bored or you finished a little early and you're like, oh, maybe I'll just check my email. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you have a specific time where you're opening yourself up, because you never know what's coming in at you. We've all had those days where we're feeling super productive and then we get a bad email and it's just like the rest of the day is shot. And you know that you could have gotten a couple more hours of productivity if you had just not checked your inbox when you didn't need to. And so there are 3 different methods you can follow, and these are all going to be based upon your personal business and situation. So the first method we have is just the everything method, where you choose 3 times a day, ideally at least 3 hours apart, where you check everything. You check your email, you check text messages, you check your project manager, you're checking Facebook, whatever you want. Like you have 3 hours in the day where you're allowed to just check everything and reply and talk to everyone and every person. Now, the second method is the quadrant method, and that's the one I'm personally using right now, where I have 3 times throughout my day where I open myself up to communications, but each time is for a different purpose. So the first time is going to be team. And when I'm not traveling, I have an hour time blocked in the day where everyone on the team knows that's when I'm in my project manager, I'm replying to questions. It doesn't always work out given all the time zones, but at least everyone knows that's the hour where I am available for questions, for talking, and I'm actually going to respond if there's a question waiting for me. Then the second communication window is clients, prospects, and leads. And so this way, you're only opening yourself up to do new business or book new sales calls or work on whatever process, whoever you have to communicate to bring in more business, and then making sure current clients and customers are happy. And then the final one, which I do at the end of the day for at most an hour and a half sometimes, just depends on how many emails you get, is where you do everything else. Now, the third method you could do for opening up windows is if you have a business where you have to talk to clients a lot. And so this is the office hours technique, which is something that I used to use very effectively. And this is essentially where you open up a 3 to 4 hour period, ideally in the afternoon, your time, where you say, hey, if you're a client and you have a question, you can email or call me. So I use something called Book Like a Boss. You can use the business version of G Suite or Calendly, and essentially it's a 3 or 4 hour block every single day where clients know they can schedule a 15 or 20 minute call with you. Now, I highly recommend you tell all your clients to send the questions ahead of time so that 15 minutes actually stays 15 minutes. But this way you can still get work done, you can still be productive, and you can give everyone else peace of mind knowing, okay, you know what, I can contact this person if I need to during this 3 to 4 hour chunk every single day. And because the calendar application does it automatically, you don't really have to worry about the back and forth emails. And then you can just have a different time block where you're talking to your team or you actually check your emails. So with that, you've probably scheduled 100% of your week. And if you're still watching this and getting some value, go ahead and hit that like button. Now it's time for my personal favorite here. This is a technique that I've recently developed that has really helped with the momentum and flow of my week, and that is inputs. So if you're looking at your calendar right now, chances are you have those boulders, you have those appointments, you have your one thing, you have everything that you'd like to get done during this week. Well, what you want to do is actually choose, especially those time blocks of your one thing or really important tasks, treat them as if you were on an airplane. So the window techniques make sure that you're not opening yourself up to communication 24/7 throughout the day. Well, what you want to do is make sure when you sit down for your work, this is called inputs, is you have everything you need to do that task, because there's nothing worse to momentum than sitting down, being ready to work on something, being ready to start, and then all of a sudden realizing, oh, I gotta go find this file, and I need to do this research and that research, and what was that again? And oh shoot, I forgot to ask the client to send me the link. And then all of a sudden, you're spending the first 10 to 20 minutes of what should be actual work just gathering everything. So what you want to do is go through very quickly and make sure you write down either in your project manager or right there in your calendar application all of the files and information you need in order to successfully complete that task. Because if you're doing this on a Sunday night or Monday morning, this way it gives you plenty of time to reach out to whoever you need to get the information. So when you sit down to do the work, it's like you're on an airplane. You have everything you need. You don't necessarily have to turn off your Wi-Fi. You can if you want. You can go that extreme, but you want to make sure that everything is there so you can just get it done. So thank you so much for watching. I sincerely hope you got some value out of this video and you have a much clearer picture on how you can successfully plan your week. Comment below with your questions, and if you have a different technique or something to add or subtract to this, go ahead and include that below, because your insights and personal experience is going to help other entrepreneurs with being successful with their weeks. So hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dive productivity videos just like this one, and until the next, keep building the business you love.